Hello and welcome. My name is Peter Gifford and this is the Esoteric Order of Gamers. Today I'm going to talk about a huge game, ISS Vanguard by Awaken Realms. Now this has been out for a little while now. There's also some more expansions coming on the way, and my goodness, what a mammoth thing this is. It is absolutely huge. It's been sitting on my table for quite a while now, and I keep looking over to it and thinking, I've got to play a little bit more before I review it. I haven't got a huge amount into the campaign, but there are reasons for that, and I also just want to make clear that this review is very much my personal opinion. This is the kind of the game that you can't really say, is it a good game? Is it a bad game? Because it's totally dependent on what type of gaming you enjoy. But I'll get into that a little bit later. For now, let me give you a bit of a rules overview of ISS Vanguard by Awaken Realms. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, Awaken Realms sent me ISS Vanguard for free so I could show it to you and do some content for it, and my rules summary and my painting tutorial. Now before I get started, let me tell you, of course, I've done a rules and reference for this game, and I think you'll find it extremely helpful. The game is divided into two distinct phases. There's a ship management phase where you go through a number of checklists, developing your ship, crafting items, getting new crew, doing production, all kinds of things that'll help you adventure more effectively when you go to planets. And then you have the landing phase where you actually land on different planets and you adventure on them and hopefully get resources and things that you can take back to the ship to then craft more, and the loop goes on. Now, of course, I've divided up my sheets in the same way, so you'll find a summary of the entire Planetary Exploration phase, and then you'll find a summary of the whole shipbook phase as well. So this is very handy. You can go through the shipbook folder step by step, but it's great to have it all on one sheet so you can get an overview of the entire process. There is, of course, also a summary sheet which will take you through the steps of planetary exploration and some icon reference on the other side. So if you're playing ISS Vanguard, I highly recommend you going to my website at orderofgamers.com, where you can download this for free, print it out, laminate it, put it in the box of ISS Vanguard. It'll make playing the game and learning it a lot easier. And it's free, though if you leave a little donation when you download one, I'd really appreciate it. So back to the game. Now, ISS Vanguard is very complicated, let's face it. The rules do have a tutorial in them, so it takes you through the first landing exploration phase of the game, and then you're on your own. And there's a lot going on in this game, and while it steps you through things very, very clearly, you'll also find that you'll be going online and trying to find answers to questions quite a lot. I found myself constantly asking questions that weren't answered in the rulebook. Now, I'm not saying the answers aren't there, it's just that it's very difficult to access the information. I'm not a big fan of tutorials, I have to say. Now, a lot of people love them, and I think, that's fantastic. I prefer just to get the rules to the game so I can learn them and then play the game, because I find tutorials so confusing because sometimes they don't have all the rules in them. So you learn a certain number of things, and then after you've done the tutorial, you find yourself learning more stuff and you're trying to match that to what you've already learnt, and it's very, very confusing. In addition, the shipbook phase is described step by step in the shipbook, which is this folder that you get in the game, where you can put all kinds of cards and everything as you go through the game. But there is no clarification, it just takes you through the steps. So if you come to a point where you don't quite get it, you're not going to get any more information because it's designed to lead you through as you play. So that can make things a little bit difficult, and I think if you go online on Board Game Geek, you'll find there are pages and pages and pages of questions. So while Paul Grogan, who did a huge amount of work on the rulebook, did a fantastic job, it's great, I do think if there was a different approach and there was just one clear rulebook, well, I'd certainly find it easier to learn anyway. So let's get started with the planetary exploration phase of the game, which is probably the meat of the gameplay. Now, I'm just going to give you a rough overview because there's so much detail here to explore during the game, and you'll be discovering it as you go along. The most important thing when you explore a planet is this. This is the Planetopia. No, the Planetopida. The Planetopida. Planopity. No. Encyclopedia? Planetopedia. Anyway, in this book you'll find a number of planets that you can go to, and I won't show you because I don't want to give you any spoilers. So when you visit a planet, you'll be choosing which crew members to take down in the lander to explore the planet. There are a number of sections: security, recon, science and engineering. And you can choose crew members from any of these sections. If you're playing solo, you need a minimum of 2 crew members. If you're playing with a group of players, they each control one of these sections and then decide whether their crew member goes down to the planet, which they probably will, let's face it. You'll have a whole number of crew, and you can select more during the game and recruit more, and they can rank up during the game. And you assign them to their section. They'll also have a number of these section dice, which come in 3 different colors: red, green and blue. And you can get more of those through the game as you develop your crew members. They get placed on your board. You also get a number of section cards that allow you to do certain things during the planetary exploration phase, usually change dice results to make them more effective for you. You've got a space for injuries. You can have charges that do various things. So when you've assembled your crew, it's time to go down in the lander that you've chosen, and you can develop different landers as you go through the game. This is the one you start with, the Space Ranger. The lander can have mods, structural mods and utility mods. It has a certain number of supplies. You'll go through a landing process. All this kind of stuff will happen until you finally get down to the planet, and then you get your miniatures from the various different departments, depending who's gone down to the planet, and they start on the landing zone space. Now, as you go exploring through the game, you'll be going through these different spaces on this board. Some of them have information already printed on them. Other ones, you'll be drawing cards to go into those spaces. All of these things link to a book full of story information, a logbook. You can either use the book supplied with the game, or there's an excellent app which allows you to access all the log numbers and get a voiceover of the information. And it leads you through the whole game rather nicely. The main way you explore things and discover things is to do dice checks using your section dice. So it's quite complex, but basically it comes down to when you do a check. In this case, for example, you need to open the shelters. Well, you'll roll a certain number of dice, and if you get particular colors of dice or particular icons, they'll give you certain results. Now, there's a whole lot going on here. There are also counter trackers, so counters can move along a track until you get the result you need. You can do all kinds of modifications to the dice you roll. If you have other crew members in the same place, they can help you get the results you need. You can play section cards that allow you to convert dice and also use other dice to draw more cards and add dice to your roll. There's so much going on. It's incredibly complex. And for the most part, if you enjoy this kind of dice check system where you're basically rolling dice and trying to get a certain type of icons, this will be right up your alley. Now, as you adventure across a planet, you'll be traveling. There'll be dangers in various travelings. You'll have missions appear over here. You'll be discovering things. There are live specimens, strange flora, microorganisms, alien tech, and mineral discoveries to discover. All of these things may give you special modifiers during your exploration, but you'll also save them in the lander when you go back, because when you're developing projects and doing upgrades to your ship, you'll need all those discoveries as the currency to spend to get those things. Of course, as you spend your section dice, you'll be running out of them and you may have to rest and refresh. You have a certain number of supplies in your lander and you'll be using up those supplies every time you do that. So there's a ticking time bomb going on every time you're exploring a planet. Now, of course, all of this would be a lot easier to handle if you had multiple players. I've only played solo up to this stage, and I'm usually controlling 3 crew members when I go down to a planet, and there's still a lot to handle. Of course, you're also drawing event cards as you go along, which can make things even more dangerous. You can get wounds, and if you get wounds, these get placed on your section dice spaces, so they can use up spaces, and you have to roll them when you do a dice check, and if the icon on the injury die matches an icon on your injury cards, then you can find yourself in trouble. This is the very briefest of overviews. I can tell you there's so much going on. Of course, as you're going to these different spaces, you're also getting log entries. So if you're using the app, for example, you're plugging in the numbers of the log entries and you're getting bits of story as well. And these all add together into nice little stories for each planet. There's not only things that the planet itself can throw at you, however, there are also threats, a whole range of not only non-human entities, but also threats like volcanoes and terrible things that can happen when you're adventuring. There's really a huge amount of imagination and variety here when you explore a planet. So hopefully you've grabbed yourself some discoveries, you defeated the dangers of the planet, you've got back to your lander and you've taken off and you've gone back to the ISS Vanguard. What happens then? Well, you get out this folder, the ship book, and this will take you through the whole process of landing back on the spaceship, making sure your crew is in med bay, setting up production projects. So much goes on. Now this step is, well, it's not really a game. It's more like bookkeeping, I have to say. And again, I'll get into this more during my personal thoughts at the end of this review. But what you do basically is you go through your ship book here, step by step, and it'll lead you through from page to page. And you'll have certain things in what is called an awaiting envelope, which are the things you've probably got on your last mission and things that are left over from before the last mission. These will come out and go into various slots in the ship book. So for example, we've got objectives and bridge upgrades here. That you'll also decide which facilities you want to visit on the ISS Vanguard to do various things. So you'll have a certain number of command tokens that let you visit a certain number of facilities. So you can go to the situation room and resolve situations that are happening on the ship which could affect you in a bad way. You could go to the barracks, recruit, train and transfer new crew members. The research laboratory will lead you to new research projects which you can hopefully complete and give you better things like a new lander or new mods for the lander, for example. The production complex leads you to new production projects and upgrades, and they go through, each time you come here, they move from left to right, and when they come off the right-hand slot, they can become useful and improve your ship and capabilities. As I said, you can recruit new crew and they can rank up as well. You can get new landers. Wow, so much going on here as well. It's heaps, but as you can see, every step of this involves going through a lot of text and checking each one. And this is something that you won't remember unless you have the most astonishing memory ever. You have to go through these lists and check every step of the way to make sure you've done the right thing. It's a very set procedure. So is this part of game? No, not in my definition of game anyway. It's basically a complex bookkeeping procedure with some interesting choices, and this part I think is excellent for solo play if you're into this kind of thing. As a group, of course, you can discuss these decisions and make them together, and there's some enjoyment to be had in that, but it's not really what I would call gaming. It's more experiencing. Of course, you're also unloading the discoveries that you made during your adventure. You go to the med bay. Dead crew members end up on the memorial wall, which is very sad. And then you've got a save point. So you can save there, and you probably will want to do that a lot because each one of these sequences of going down to a planet and going through the ship book will probably take, well, it says about 2 to 4 hours. Yep, 2 to 4 hours. Now, I could go into so much more detail about the rules to ISS Vanguard. There is so much happening here. And the first thing I want to say is it's a remarkable achievement. There is a box full of miniatures as well, beautiful miniatures if you want to paint them up. And basically they're just used to place on locations or on threats to show you that they exist. They don't actually move around or do anything. This is something that often happens with Awaken games. Miniatures are a lovely extra, and they look very nice, and I was very happy to paint up my crew members. In fact, I've done a tutorial for painting these crew members if you'd like to paint them yourself. Very happy to do that, but they're not an essential part of gameplay by any means. But what you have here is an amazing achievement when it comes to production quality and imagination. Awaken Realms is known for their unbelievably imaginative games and their very, very complex story experience type games, like This War of Mine, and of course Tainted Grail. Now, ISS Vanguard is very much in the same vein. So whether you enjoy this experience or not is very much down to what you expect from it. If you're coming to ISS Vanguard looking for what I would define as a game, I think you'll be disappointed. And I say that only because I define a game in a certain way, and that is something that is very interactive. It is something that's got a set of mechanics that everybody knows, and the experience of the game comes from those mechanics. And there's usually some kind of competitive element, whether it's between players or the game itself. You know, we all know what a game is. This, I think, is, sure, it's a game, but it's a choose-your-own-adventure experience taken up to level 11. Because basically what you're doing here is going through a story. It gives you some branching paths. You can do it in different orders. There are heaps of choices to be made about crafting and improving your ship and ranking up your crew members and doing all these things. There are lots of things to experience, but it is, in the end, experiencing a story. And it's experiencing adventure and all the rest of it, but it's not really gaming that adventure. This is a really difficult distinction, and it's hard to describe because I don't want to come down on ISS Vanguard at all. I think for the right person, this is fantastic. The problem is, I'm personally not that person, and the reason is, I don't have the time. I really don't. Running the Esoteric Order of Gamers, running my life, working, I don't have the time to sit down and play this game the amount that it deserves. I also don't have the friends who also have the time to do it with me. So getting a group of people together to commit to this game is a big deal. And if you all do it, I think you'll really, really enjoy it. If you want to play it solo, which I think a lot of people are doing because it's much more convenient to just leave it set up on a table and go back to it for an hour or two a day or whatever. But remember, each of those sessions is kind of 2 to 4 hours, so you really need the time. It's like playing a long video game. You'll get probably hundreds of hours worth of entertainment out of this. And I think that's fantastic for some people. And I was talking with a friend the other day and I was just saying, I wish I was 25 again and had plenty of time. You seem to have so much time when you were young. It's incredible. Because I'd love this kind of thing. It would take up all my spare time and I'd really enjoy playing it. Probably with friends because we all had time. Or even solo, I'd really enjoy it. But now that I'm older, I really just don't have the time to devote so much to one game. And you will be devoting so much to it. So that's one issue I have with it, but that's, as I said, is just a personal issue. As an extension of that, there are certain things about this game which I don't enjoy, but I think some people would really enjoy. For example, the whole ship management phase. Now, I've talked to people who enjoy this part of the game more than the exploration phase. So it is very much a matter of personal choice. But personally, I don't enjoy going through checklists of things to do and making decisions as I go through those checklists, because it just feels like work to me. It doesn't feel like a game. It feels like I'm going through a process, making the occasional decision, and I'm constantly delving into the 2 trays of cards and finding the right cards and getting them out and slotting them into slots in the folder and moving things along the slots and taking them out and putting them in the awaiting envelope and then out of the awaiting envelope and then spending success tokens to put that into that slot and go, yeah! It's not fun. Now, I know for sure that there are lots of people who really enjoy that kind of thing, and I can actually really imagine how that can be fun. It just isn't fun for me. So again, it's silly of me to review this and say this is a good game or a bad game. I think it's a good experience if you like this type of experience. And again, I have to say, I absolutely admire the astonishing amount of work and imagination that's gone into this. Now, the app itself, of course, you probably want to play this game using the app because it has voices doing all the parts of the story as it goes along. However, I didn't quite enjoy the app as much as I have in other games of this type, and that's mainly because there's a very small cast of voiceover people doing it, and I didn't think they were very good. There's kind of a chipper Jimmy Olsen kind of character who's kind of annoying, and the acting isn't that great. The other thing, of course, is because it's reading out all the text, it's constantly reading things out like mission report, time 06:42, the kind of stuff that you'd skip over if you were reading it over in the book, but you're sitting there listening to the computer say that kind of thing over and over again, and it's not very entertaining. So this may be one of these games where you might prefer actually reading it from the book rather than using the app. Now, because this is a big campaign game, you really have to keep track of quite a lot as you go along, and there is an entire page called a save point where it takes you through the steps of saving things for the next game. But really, it'd be best experienced if you could leave it set up on a table for about 4 months. There are things to keep track of, like keeping track of your different section departments. Now, these are the fancy boxes that came with the Kickstarter extras. They're very nice, they're magnetic. In the top level here, you can keep track of your section dice, and in the bottom level, you can keep track of your section cards. And also, if you have the expansion the personnel files, there'll be some extra cards in there to give a personal backstory to your characters as well, to each of the many, many characters that you can get in this game. So that adds a bit of distinctiveness to the otherwise faceless crew members. But you have to be careful as you go along because there are so many opportunities to make a mistake and then really stuff things up later on. I've heard of people on their third playthrough of this campaign, and you can imagine they are doing everything with absolutely practiced precision by that point, and it's a beautiful flowing experience. But the first time you're playing it, it can be a bit confusing and also a little bit frustrating. I got to a point eventually where I spent my energy to go to a particular place. It turned out I couldn't land there because it was too dangerous. So I had to sort of fly back to a system that I'd already been in and go back to a planet that I've already gone to. Now I know the experience will be slightly different when I go down, but also it was kind of frustrating to have to go back to something where I knew roughly what was going to happen, especially when the session is going to take multiple hours. And I'm afraid my interest just bleeds away at that point. But if you're the kind of person who is really determined to get through the game and discover every little thing that it has to offer, pretty much like playing a video game when you want to run around and collect every collectible and things like that. I think it's a similar kind of drive to play that kind of game and this kind of game. So if you enjoy that kind of thing, I think you'll absolutely love this. So folks, that's my review of ISS Vanguard. Now, I know I haven't gone into astonishing detail about the way it works and everything like that. I just wanted to give you an overview. So if you haven't played this game yet, you just know what you're in for if you decide to pick it up somewhere. I'm sure it'll be going to retail. Usually Awaken Realms games do go to retail. And I hope from this review you can understand that this game needs certain types of players. If you really want a very, very deep science fiction solo experience, you're going to absolutely love this. If you've got the time to devote to it, you're going to love it. If you have a group of players who have the time to devote to it to do the entire campaign, it can be very immersive. Unfortunately, I've got heaps and heaps of games I want to play. So every time I get a chance to play it, we usually bring something new out. And it's very, very difficult to devote the time and energy required to something of this nature. And because I'm so busy doing stuff for the Esoteric Order of Gamers and for myself, I don't have the time to do the whole campaign solo either. So while I really admire these types of games, and I think they definitely fill a niche, they're just not necessarily for me. However, one day I hope to be sitting in a nice comfortable nursing home with lots and lots of time on my hands, and then I'll bring down ISS Vanguard from the shelf and highly enjoy playing it by myself or maybe with someone else in the nursing home. And we'll spend many, many enjoyable days going through the campaign. Hopefully I'll be happy, healthy, and have plenty of time on my hands. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. If you have any questions about ISS Vanguard, or in fact anything that I do, feel free to ask them in the comments. I answer every single comment just about. Of course, go to the website at orderofgamers.com and you'll find my rules and reference sheet, which you can download, print out, and laminate it too, because it looks great laminated and it fits very nicely in the box. It has the same style, graphic design and everything as well. And I think it'll make playing this game a lot easier. If you enjoy these videos, please subscribe, hit the all notifications button. I've also got a Patreon channel if you want to check it out. But most importantly, go check out that website. And by the way, I've got new gear for the brand new Esoteric Order of Gamers. This is the first video featuring the new logo. And you can go along to the website and you'll find links to heaps of merchandise and 3 different versions of this logo, which you can have on that merchandise. So much stuff. Enjoy, everybody. Happy gaming. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.